The autonomic nervous system, it is an autonomous system, is involuntary system. So this involuntary system has a two divisions. One is a sympathetic system and another one is parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system is the increased activities of the body in emergency. The parasympathetic is back to the normal resting stage. So the two divisions, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So now we will go to the pathway of this sympathetic system and parasympathetic system. The pathway, that means the impulses are transmits. How? So in the sympathetic system pathway, the preganglionic neurons, the cell bodies are located in the lateral gray column of T1 to L2 or L3 segments of spinal cord. The cell bodies of the preganglionic neurons that lies in the lateral gray columns of T1 to L2 or L3 segments of spinal cord. Then the synapses, that is at pre or paravertebral ganglion. The synapses means the joining with another neuron, that is at a pre or paravertebral ganglion. That is number one. Then autonomic ganglion. The autonomic ganglion is usually called as sympathetic trunk or prevertebral ganglion or lateral ganglion. The sympathetic trunk or prevertebral ganglion or lateral vertebral ganglion. Then postganglionic neurons, the cell bodies are located in the prevertebral ganglion. The fibers are innervative, they are visceral effectors. That is sympathetic pathway. Now the parasympathetic system pathway, that is usually called as craniosacral division. That means this parasympathetic system, that usually the preganglionic neuron cell bodies are located in the nuclei of cranial nerves of in the midbrain, that is in the brain stem. The cell bodies of the preganglionic neurons, that is in the nuclei of cranial nerves. That cranial nerves are 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th, that is in the brain stem. That means the preganglionic neurons, the cell bodies in the cranial nerves nuclei, that is 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th in the brain stem. Then similarly in the lateral gray horn, the lateral gray column of the S2 to S4 segments of the spinal cord, that is in the sacral region. So that is why it is called as craniosacral division. Then the autonomic ganglions are called as terminal ganglion or intermural ganglion. So these lies close to the effector or within the wall of the effector. Nearer to the effector means nearer to the organs or the wall of the organs, that is the autonomic ganglion. Then postganglionic neurons are very short. The cell bodies in the terminal ganglion, that is nearer to or within the visceral effector, that ganglion, and postganglionic neurons almost nearer within the visceral effector. So usually the presynaptic neuron synapses with 4 or 5 neurons, the postsynaptic neuron that passes to a single visceral effector, that is the innervation of the nerve fibers. Now you can see in the somatic system, so the nerve fibers, the neuron, the cell bodies in the central nervous system, the axon, that will be in the peripheral nervous system. This axon is covered by a myelin sheath, and the end of the neuron, that is secretes, that is neurotransmitters. Particularly these secretes the ACH, that is acetylcholine. Usually these are distributed in the skeletal muscles. Coming to the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. In the sympathetic system, the cell body is particularly in the T1 to L2 or L3 level. So the ganglion, that means the synapse with the postganglionic neuron, that is paravertebral or prevertebral ganglion. Then this is postganglionic neuron, that is the termination. So usually the preganglionic neuron is releases the ACH, then postganglionic neuron releases the norepinephrine. The two neurotransmitters different, the preganglionic and postganglionic neurons. In the parasympathetic nervous system, so the preganglionic neuron releases the ACH and postganglionic neuron is also releases the ACH, that is the same neurotransmitters, ACH, acetylcholine, NE, norepinephrine. That is the difference in neurotransmitters which are released by sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So see here the sympathetic division, that is particularly T1 to L1 or L2 level, that is lateral gray columns of T1 to L1 or sometimes L2, that is the lateral horn of gray columns, that is the location of cell bodies. Then the ganglion, they are usually called as paravertebral or prevertebral ganglion, and the totally there is a communications of this ganglion and forms as a different levels. So that is usually called as sympathetic trunk. So this sympathetic trunk, that will be the communications of that synapses of the pre and post ganglionic neurons. Then again in the parasympathetic, see the cranial nuclei of 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th cranial nerve nuclei are the cell bodies, and similarly sacral 2 to 4 segments of spinal cord, that is why it is craniosacral divisions, that is the portion of parasympathetic division. So both the organs are innervated by this sympathetic and as well as parasympathetic divisions. Then the sympathetic system division, that is paired by trunk, that is lies anterolateral to the spinal cord, that paired by trunk, that the anterolateral to the spinal cord. The divisions, the cervical ganglia, there are 3 in numbers, superior, middle and inferior, that is superior is posterior to the internal carotid artery, middle is near the 6th cervical vertebra, inferior near the first rib. That is the 3 ganglions in the cervical region. Then in the thoracic ganglion, there are 11 in numbers. They lies ventral to the necks of the corresponding ribs. They are 11 in numbers. That is the thoracic ganglion. Then similarly the lumbar ganglia, 4 in numbers. They either side of the lumbar vertebra. Then the sacral ganglion, they are 4 in numbers. They medial to sacral foramina. Then we coming to the parasympathetic division. So this system, so usually there are ganglia are 4 pairs plus plexus. So usually there is a 4 pairs of ganglia and plexus, that is parasympathetic system division. So ciliary ganglion, that passes with the 3rd cranial nerve back to the orbital and lateral to the optic nerve. Then second one is pterygopalatine ganglion, that passes with the facial nerve, that is lateral to the spinopalatal foramina. Then third one is submandibular ganglia, that passes with the facial nerve, that nearer the duct of submandibular salivary gland. Then otic ganglion, that passes with the glossopharyngeal nerve that belongs to the foramina ovale. So these are the 4 ganglia. Then again the plexus. So the plexus are in the cardiac region, the superficial and deep cardiac plexus, pulmonary plexus, hypogastric plexus. So these are the plexus which will be related to that. So the transmitter substances that you already known, the synapse between pre and post ganglionic neuron, there is any neurotransmitters. So points of contact with the several effectors, that is neuroeffectors. So that fibers is usually may called as cholinergic fibers. That means the preganglionic axons of the sympathetic and parasympathetic, they releases the ACH, so they are called as cholinergic fibers. Then postganglionic axons of the parasympathetic and postganglionic axons of the some sympathetic, like sweat glands, blood vessels, skeletal muscles, and to the skin and external genitalia. So they releases the acetylcholine, that is, and also enzyme acetylcholinesterase. So that effect is local and short-lived actions. This is the neurotransmitters. So be remember of these neurotransmitters. Adrenergic fibers. Adrenergic fibers means the postganglionic axons of the sympathetic neuron that releases the norepinephrine. So that is adrenergic fibers. But in the parasympathetic, that both pre and post ganglionic neurons are releases the ACH. That is the difference of this one. So we once again remember the sympathetic pathway, that is thoracolumbar outflow from T1 to L2, then sympathetic trunk or prevertebral ganglion, the preganglionic nerve synapses with many postganglionic nerves, and that passes to many visceral effectors, then distributed throughout the body including the skin also. The postganglionic nerve fibers that liberates the norepinephrine at most of the ending, and ACH only few nerves, that is sweat glands, then prepares the body for emergency, and the long postganglionic nerve fiber. So this is the features of the sympathetic system. Then parasympathetic system, that is usually called as craniosacral outflow, that is cranial nerve 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th, then sacral segments, that is 2nd to 4th, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, that is lateral gray column of sacral segments. Then the ganglions are called as terminal ganglion. So usually the preganglionic nerve synapses with 4 or 5 postganglionic neurons, and that passes to the single visceral effectors and distributed to the limited viscera. Then postganglionic nerves liberates, that is ACH, and conserves the storage of energy, and these the postganglionic nerve fibers are short in nature. This is the feature of parasympathetic system. Then coming to the functions of the nervous system, so that is autonomic nervous system function. What is that? The autonomic nervous system along with the endocrine system maintains the stability of the internal environment of the body. The autonomic nervous system along with the endocrine system maintains the stability of the internal environment of the body. The functions for the most part of the subconscious level, we are not aware for that. For example, dilatation of the pupils and vascular dilatation or contraction, these are the subconscious level function. We are not aware of that, but the function is going on. Then various activities of the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system integrated within the hypothalamus unit. That is the point. Then the sympathetic and parasympathetic cooperate in maintaining the stability of internal environment. There is a coordination between sympathetic and parasympathetic, they cooperate in maintaining the stability of internal environment. Then sympathetic prepares and mobilizes the body in an emergency. The parasympathetic part aims to conserving and storing the energy. Then the many viscera do not possess this fine dual control from the autonomic system. That means no dual innervation. For example, the smooth muscles of the hair follicles, the erector pili muscles, which are innervated only sympathetic activities. The activity of the some viscera are kept under the constant state of inhibition by one or other components of the autonomic nervous system. Example, in a trained athlete, the heart maintains normal rate, no any changes of its beat. For example, if we are having a training of continuous running in a fast, but there is no any changes of the physical activities increase, so the heartbeat is normally as you are running stages because it is trained. So in that conditions is always would be a normal of in that of the position. So this is the point you have to be remember of these functions of the autonomic nervous system. So main pathway and the functions and locations is important in this related part of the autonomic nervous system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic.